Welcome in, everybody. We're diving into Rick Rubin's The Creative Act today. And for anyone who's been, under a rock for the last 30 years, he's only worked with, like, everyone. From Adele
Yeah.
to Slayer.
Huge.
But this book, right, it's not just for musicians.
No.
It's about, like, tapping into that creative energy we've all got.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because Rubin's whole premise is that creativity, it's not this like mystical thing that some people are born with and some people aren't. It's a way of being.
Yeah?
It's something that you can actually cultivate.
Okay, so he says right away that we're all artists.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't just mean like painters and, whatever, musicians.
Yeah.
He takes it way beyond that.
Exactly. He says, and this is a quote, "We create forests and oceans, warmth and cold." What he means is that our minds, they're not just passively observing life, right? We're actively shaping our experiences by how we choose to interpret the world.
So you're saying that even something as simple as me, like picking out what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, that's a creative act.
It can be. Think about it. You are choosing what ingredients you're going to combine, how you want them to taste together. You're creating an experience based on, like, your own unique preferences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm an artist.
Yeah.
Maybe not one with a Michelin star anytime soon.
Cool.
But what about those times, and I think we've all been there, where we just feel stuck, like that creative spark, it's just not there.
Right.
Rubin talks about how some people, they just seem to have these like more sensitive antennas for those creative messages, for that inspiration. Can we actually like make ours stronger? Can we train them?
That's where it gets really, really cool, I think, because Rubin says that you can cultivate that sensitivity. Wow. And he uses this example of how, like, some artists, especially musicians, might be, like, super in tune to, like, subtle sounds or rhythms that most people wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
And he calls them, and this is a term from the book, feeling tones. And he says that they're essential for deeper creative expression.
So it's like instead of me just like hearing a song, I'm feeling it like in my bones.
Yes, exactly. It's about being more present in the moment. It's about being more aware of how things are impacting you, and not just like on an intellectual level, but like emotionally, even physically. And then using that awareness, right, that heightened awareness to like fuel your creative work.
Okay, I can see how like being more in tune with those feeling tones could be a total game changer.
Yeah.
For people.
Absolutely.
So how do we do it? How do we tap into those messages, like that deeper well of inspiration? Rubin calls it the source, right?
He does.
Yes.
Yeah, and here's the thing about the source that I think is so important. It's not some like mystical, far off place that you have to, meditate for hours to reach. It's actually a lot closer than that.
Okay.
Rubin says that the source is everything you've ever experienced, like everything you've ever seen, done, felt, thought, even forgotten. It's all material for your creative process.
So it's not about like emptying your mind.
Right.
It's about tapping into this vast reservoir of experiences that we're all carrying around with us.
Yes.
But I mean, come on, with so much in there, how do we even begin to like sift through it all?
Right.
And find the good stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where mindfulness comes in.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
It is all about mindfulness, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's not like you have to, sit on a mountaintop to access this stuff.
Good.
He actually talks about like finding mindfulness in these like everyday moments.
Right.
And he gives this example of like observing a flower. And he says like, you're not trying to analyze it. You're not thinking like, oh, it's a rose, it's red, it has thorns.
Right.
It's about really like seeing it.
Okay.
The way that the light hits the petals, like the subtle gradations of color.
Right.
Just letting the experience kind of like wash over you.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Like slowing down, really paying attention.
Yeah.
But let's be real, like nobody has time for that.
Right.
We live in a world of distractions. So how do we actually make space for that kind of like mindful awareness?
Rubin suggests things like mindful breathing, spending time in nature, things like that.
Right.
It's about shifting your like default state to being more receptive to like these subtle creative whispers that are kind of like always there amidst the noise.
It's like we're trying to like tune our senses to pick up on a different frequency.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's this whole other layer to this source thing
Yeah.
that I found really interesting when Rubin starts talking about like the spiritual side of creativity and this feeling of like connection to something larger than ourselves.
Yes.
What did you make of that?
I think it's actually something that a lot of artists really connect with.
Okay.
And Rubin's not talking about any one religion or anything like that, but just that feeling you get when you're in, like, deep in the creative flow.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're being guided by something.
Right.
Outside of your, your conscious mind,
Right.
He describes it as another hand guiding yours.
Yes. Like that uncanny intuition almost.
Yes.
Where it's like the perfect solution or the perfect next line, the perfect whatever, just appears out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like tapping into this like universal wellspring of creativity.
It really is.
But how do we access that? Like practically speaking.
Right.
Like, are we just supposed to sit around waiting for lightning to strike?
And that's where I think Rubin's practical exercises come in.
Okay.
Because it's not enough to just be receptive. You have to actively cultivate it.
Right.
You have to be experimenting and pushing those boundaries.
Yeah.
And he has a ton of different exercises, techniques in the book. It's like a workout routine for your creative muscles.
I'm intrigued. Give me one.
Okay.
So what's one of those creative workouts I can try today?
Well, one that I really liked is he calls it making it up.
Okay.
And it's basically approaching your work with this sense of playfulness,
Yeah.
Like you're not trying to create a masterpiece on the first try.
Right, like lower the stakes.
Total.
Take the pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And it made me think about what he was saying about how we put all these rules on ourselves about what art is supposed to be.
Right. Like it has to be this or it has to be that.
Exactly. And he's challenging all those assumptions about, even what tools we use.
Right.
Like he says, if you're always reaching for the same paintbrush, you're limiting what you can create.
He's got a good point.
Right.
Yeah, he does. He says if you're picking colors from a Pantone book, you're limited to a certain number of choices.
Yeah.
But if you just step outside, the palette is infinite.
Exactly. And, he uses this other example about visual art, and he says, go to an art museum.
Okay.
Most paintings you see are on these rectangular canvases.
Right.
But that's not a rule. It's just something that we've come to expect. It's an assumption. It's totally an assumption. He says painting can be anything with color on a surface.
Whoa, okay. You're blowing my mind right now.
Thanks.
So you're saying if I usually write songs on guitar, maybe I should dust off the old melodica that's been sitting in my closet.
There you go.
And just see what happens.
Exactly, exactly. And he even talks about shaking things up in your collaborations.
Okay.
Imagine giving a screenwriter just a single sentence and being write me a story about this.
Intriguing.
Or he talks about giving a band just the chords to a song.
Okay.
But not letting them hear the melody.
Wow.
And seeing how they reinterpret it.
So it's like giving your collaborators just enough to spark their own creativity without boxing them in with too much information. So if we're bringing all this together, then it's about being mindful so we can tap in to the source.
Right.
We got to trust our intuition.
Yes.
But we've also got to actively experiment and challenge our assumptions about, what the creative process should look like.
You got it.
Did I get it?
You got it. Rubin's whole approach is about embracing creativity as this way of being, this constant state of openness and receptivity.
And remembering that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
It's more about expressing our own unique perspective on things.
Absolutely. He calls it your point of view,
Yeah.
He says the goal of art isn't to attain perfection. The goal is to share who we are and how we see the world.
And to think that's coming from the guy who produced 99 Problems. Amazing. But I guess it just goes to show you, creativity exists everywhere, in every genre, in every art form.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling stuck, maybe the answer isn't to, try harder.
Right.
But to just try something different.
Totally.
Play around a little bit.
Exactly. Just have fun with it.
Yeah.
He says, when making art, we create a mirror in which someone may see their own hidden reflection. What will your mirror reflect?
That's deep, man. And on that note, I think that's a wrap for our deep dive on the creative act.
Yes, I hope it gives our listeners some food for thought and encourages them to check out the book for themselves.
Absolutely. And until next time, stay curious, everybody, and keep those creative sparks flying.